So, 2 amazing days, right? So many great talks, and I will do my best not to spoil that within this last hour. And I actually have 3 more goals with today. And goal number 1 is to convince you all that it's a good thing to get old. Goal number 2 is to convince you all that you shouldn't go faster. You should probably do the opposite and slow down. And goal number 3 is to convince you all that you should code until you die. So will I succeed? Well, I guess we will have the answer to that question in about 45 minutes. So welcome to this final talk of DevConf 2024. So I am Tobias Modig, a consultant at Tobias in Stockholm. I'm currently acting as a developer coach, and this is Get Old, Go Slow, Write Code. And this talk will be a bit interactive. I will use an online poll, so you can already now use your mobile phones and go to menti.com and use the code 18566709. Just use a QR code. But no worries if you missed the link now, it will come back later in this talk. So let's get going. And I will start with the age thing. And I will actually quote myself from my talk description. So turning old as a developer is hard. It is hard to stay relevant, hard to keep up with the competition of newcomers, and hard to know all of those new frameworks, tools, languages, and practices. So about 20 years ago, I worked at this big travel company back in Stockholm, and we were like 15 developers who were placed in this big room. But in the corner of that room, there were 2 odd fishes, 2 grumpy old men, and one of them actually coughed so loud, so everyone took shelter under the desk each time, hiding from what we thought was like the World War III incoming. And these 2 old men, they worked at a different system. I believe it was some kind of like maintenance system, and it had this really old-fashioned UI taken directly from war games. And the programming language, I know it wasn't Java, and it couldn't have been C because both of them lacked, you know, this big C developer beards. So I guess it was like Fortran. But suddenly, one day, they were gone. The system was replaced. That had become irrelevant, like dinosaurs from a past time. And those 2 old men, they have in some way been like my mental model about how it is to get old as a developer. Not getting old just physically, but also when it comes to skills. But still, I do admire those 2 old men because they stayed on with their passion of writing code until the bitter end. But back to the question here, what is old? And what do you think? It's time to pick up those mobile phones. So, time to browse to menti.com and use the code 18566709, or just use the QR code. So we'll remove that code in like 5, 4, 3, 2. Yeah, I guess everyone is set. So that was actually just a warm-up question to check that we were online. And I am glad that we don't have that many killers here in the room. But still, there are like 2 people in here. Who wants to kill Yoda? Yeah, 2. I have one message for you. There is a door. But at least like no. Are you kidding me? I was going to say that at least the Yoria Binks Yoda ratio is pretty okay, but let's skip this. Let's go to the first main question. Should be an easy one. What is your age? Are you 0 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, or are you older than 50? Quite a clear winner here. So let's move on to the second one. So, are you a software developer? Of course you are. Or did you used to be? Oh, no way. I will never touch code. Quite a clear winner here as well. So, from a developer perspective, do you consider yourself being old? Yes. No. Or more like, are you kidding me? I will never get old. And this is a quite tight race, actually. So the final question for now, once again, from a developer perspective, what do you consider being old? Is it when you reach the 20, when you reach 30, when you reach 40, when you become 50 or above? Or you're more that type that thinks that everyone older than you, they are really old, but I will never really get there. Then you go for the my age plus one. Or is it more that age is not really a physical thing? That seems to be the main option here. So let's get back to the presentation. So what actually got me into this aging thing from the beginning was reading the Stack Overflow developer survey back in 2019, and it stated that the average age of software developers was 28. So 75% of us were below 35. So India had the youngest developers with about 26 on average, while the Australians were the oldest with a bit over 32 on average. So when I saw this, it felt quite young. So I actually cross-checked it to a few more sources, getting more or less the same results. So compared to that, I would actually claim that the audience in this room is quite grown up. I don't know if it's like it's getting late. Maybe the youngling is like home watching TV, eating popcorn. I don't know. Nevertheless, average age, 28, sounded quite young. So I started to compare us to other professions. Of course, it's a bit like comparing apple and oranges, so don't take these numbers like an exact truth, but I'm sure it's accurate enough to give you some kind of like perspective when comparing software developers to others. So I started to compare us with teachers. So what's the average age of a teacher? And it actually turned out to be like the meaning of life for those of you who knows your hitchhiking. It's 42. I mean, they beat us with almost 15 years. That is quite a big difference, right? And how about medical doctors? Well, no surprise there. Even older than teachers, average 51. So 42% of the doctors are older than 55. Project managers, I believe this is a quite interesting one, because I think that software developers, project managers, we have more or less the same level of education, we work within the same projects for the same employers, so with the same age. No way, same age as teachers, average 42. So I continue to check up against some other common office jobs, but I couldn't find anything that was even close to like software developers. So I started to realize that I couldn't find any jobs that demanded a higher level of education and had an age profile that looks like software developers. So I started to compare it to other types of jobs that don't demand those years at the university. For instance, taxi drivers. But they are even older than teachers. Average age, 47. I really needed to go lower, so I grabbed that cab. I went to the bar, start talking to the bartender, and now we're getting closer. But still, they are like 6.5 years older than us, with an average of a bit over 34 and a half. How about the colleagues at restaurants, the dishwashers? No luck there. That's a bugger, also 34. And now I'm starting to be quite grumpy, because I really wanted to find something by myself that was younger than us developers. I didn't just want to like cheat and read some top of the statistics. But then I remember this tweet I saw. Minecraft players. So how old are they? And they actually turned out to be 24. I mean, we beat them with 4 years. That's not bad, but still it's a bigger gap between being a software developer and a bartender than it is between being a software developer and a Minecraft player. And also, like, playing Minecraft don't really feels like a true profession for most of us, right? It still felt a bit like cheating. But then I got it. You can always count on the US military, right? And in this case, that was actually true. They have an average age of 27, so we beat them with a year. And also, this is not really a profession, right? More of an employer. So this includes everything from like 5-star generals to pilots to tank drivers. So for instance, I expect the cannon fodder to be even younger than 27. And also sports professionals, for instance, professional football players, get an average of about 26 and a half. And when finally cheating with that statistics, I found a few more like jobs that were younger than us. For instance, I believe that the lifeguards were the youngest, with a bit over 22 on average. But still, I would claim that being a software developer is definitely one of the youngest working groups in the world. And when taking level of education under account, we are probably the youngest. But on the other hand, age, that's just a number of a paper, right? Like you said. So what's actually more important to me is how long do we tend to stay within the profession? And once again, I will bump that question back to you. So time for the mobile phones again. Menti.com. We just use a QR code. I will give you a few more seconds. So, how many years of experience as a professional software developer do you have? Is it more than 20? 16 to 20, 15, 11 to 15, 6 to 10, 2 to 5, or less than 2 years of experience? Quite an even race here, but like tight race between 6 to 10 and 11 to 15. So, second question. What was the age of the best developer you have ever worked with? Was he or she less than 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, or older than 50? When you thought that they were the best, maybe. Let's find an average here. So final question for now. If you take a wild guess, how many years do you think you will continue being a software developer? Are you actually not a developer? Or is this your final year? Do you think you will be coding for 1 to 2 years, for 3 to 5 years, for 6 to 10 years? Do you think you will be coding for 10 years or more? Or will you actually code until you die? And let's just cross our fingers and hope that that last option is actually like longer than the other ones. I can't guarantee that. Guess we have quite a lot of coders in here. So once again, I would say that this audience a little bit more experienced than the rest of the developer world, because the expected number of years to stay as a software developer, that is 8. After 8 years, the average developer quits, moves on, starts doing something else. And I would say that that's not good. I think we are replacing the developer tribe way too often, throwing competence right at the scrapyard. So why is that? Are people using being like software developer as some kind of like bouncing pads towards other professions? Or are we scaring them away? I don't know. Once again, back to you. What do you think? So what do you think will make you quit as a developer? Do you think you will be burned out? Do you think you will get a promotion, change your role? Do you think you will be coding until retirement? Or do you think you will lose your spark? It will not be fun to code anymore. Or do you think it has something to do with like aging, getting old, getting slow? Or are you more the optimistic type? Like you are coding for money to buy those lottery tickets, and when you finally hit the jackpot, then you're off to Bahamas and you won't print one single if statement for the rest of your life? Or do you have some other kind of reason? And I guess we have quite a lot of burned out people in here. That's not good. So actually, once again, this audience is a little bit different from the rest of the world, I guess, because when having this talk and when reading statistics, there are usually 3 things that stand out as reasons for developers to quit. There are losing the spark when it's not fun to code anymore. The second one is changing role, getting a promotion. And the third one is actually getting old, getting slow. So burned out, that usually actually will be a little bit lower, but I'm no psychologist. I will not like give you the total advice, but I guess we might touch upon that as well, but let me elaborate a little bit more on those top three, the usual top three at least, starting with losing the spark. And to me, it would be interesting to know why people lose like the eagerness to code. It is a bit out of scope for this talk, but still, I think this is a sad, but also very valid reason for a developer to quit. I mean, if you don't have your passion for coding, you should probably not have it as a profession either. So the day you start to wake up in the morning with some feeling that I don't want to code anymore, I want to do something else, then you have my total blessing. Please, move on, try something else. But how about the second reason? Getting a promotion, changing role, or climbing the company hierarchy. Well, if this is like the combination of the first one, losing the spark, this is probably a very valid path to take. I mean, continue with the same company, you know your organization, you know the domain, you have a great fallback option to move back to coding if that new role wasn't something for you. But if not, if you're more in a hunt for a higher salary or a role with like more status, then I don't know. I actually stepped into this trap myself once. So I was quite flattered, but also surprised when I was offered to become head of development at this .NET place. But I'm sorry to say, but it was so boring. It felt like a total waste of my expertise. Instead of doing things that I loved, things that I think I'm pretty decent at, like doing techy stuff and writing code, I was stuck at those budget meetings, talking about resources or arguing with a cab. You know, the change advisory board? Well, this change in our mobile app that my developers did could not make airplanes to fall down from the sky. You might think that that was a bad joke, but it's actually true. I once had to explain to this group of hopefully quite smart people why changes in our mobile app could not make airplanes to crash. But did I do a good job as a manager? Well, I think my teams liked me, and I was pretty good guarding them from like the insanity of company administration. But I wasn't that good from any other point of views. And I guess most of us have seen this. Just because someone is a great developer, that person will not automatically become a great manager or a good project leader or even a decent agile coach. I would actually claim that the opposite is probably just as common. And there is actually a term regarding this, stated in the late 60s by Lawrence J. Peter and Raymond Hull, and it's called the Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle states that a person who is competent at their job will earn promotion to a more senior position, which requires different skills. But if the promoted person lacks the skills required for the new role, then they will be incompetent at the new level. And so they will not be promoted again. So people will be like promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. And there they will stay, being incompetent. In worst case, forever. In best case, until they get fired. And this will eventually lead to what's called the Peter Corollary. So in time, every post tends to be occupied by an employee who is incompetent to carry out his duties. Of course, it's a bit satirical, but according to this, we have companies out there where more or less everyone is incompetent at their job. So, as I said, probably a bit satirical, but it got quite a touch of truth in it as well. And here we have what I usually call the software developer lifecycle, where we developers, we should start as an ordinary developer, but after a few years, we should try to move on. We are more or less pushed, try to move on, maybe become a team lead, or take the next step and become a project leader, maybe an ivory architect, and finally some of us might reach nirvana and become some kind of like manager. To me, that's mostly trying to push people from being competent to being incompetent. And we have known this for like 50 years, and still this is one of the most common reasons for developers to quit. I mean, there is even courses in moving from developers to managers. Well, I think this is whacked. I think we need to address this. There must be ways to make a career and continue coding. So any manager seeing this, could you please stop transforming your like 10x developers into like 0.4x administrators? Instead, give them a decent salary, reward them continuously, and let them keep on doing what they do best, writing code. And you developers who think about changing careers, please think this over. It's not worth it if you still have the passion for coding. Believe me, I have tried. But how about the third reason for a developer to quit? Getting slow, having a hard time to keep up. Is it a problem to get old as a software developer? I mean, maybe Zuckerberg were right. Young people are just smarter. So are we over 40 like dinosaurs, ready for extinctions? Well, I might be biased here, but I would actually claim that Zuckerberg is wrong. I mean, if you take a good look at most Nobel Prize winners these days, they look more like American presidents than software developers, right? And also, Newton, for instance, he was 44 when he discovered, or when he published the Principia. Röntgen was about the same age when discovering the X-rays. So no, I don't think that people get stupid when they get old. But still, I believe that we oldies, we need to stay relevant. We should not like paint ourselves into the corners like the old man that used to cough at my previous place. So when getting old, don't niche yourself too much. Try to be a generalist as well, because you never know. You might need to change your job one last time, even if you're like 64. But how about the slowness? Well, I would actually claim that slow is good. Don't think about slow as something bad. Slow is good. I think that we need to slow down. Actually, in one of my older talks, I quickly mentioned that I thought that software developers were moving too fast, that we needed to slow down. And I actually found out that way smarter people than me had more or less the same ideas. Or how about these tweets from the TDD guru, JB Rainsberger? Worried that TDD will slow down your programmers? Don't. They probably need slowing down. This one also from JB. Sooner, not faster. Slow down to avoid making rash commitments. Or this one from Lemmy, the guy who cracked the MacBooks a few years ago. Going fast without control could be the biggest enemy of software development. Still not convinced? Joshua Karyevsky, father of modern agile. We slow down in order to gain better balance and control. Ultimately, this kind of slowing down helps us speed up. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. So what is fast? What is speed? What is slowing down? Well, I believe that too many people mix up rushing with speed. People want us, developers, to be like Usain Bolt. You know, Usain Bolt, the fastest man on earth, on 100 meters. But what they forget is the software development. It is not a 100 meters dash. It's more of a marathon. Still, we behave as Usain Bolts, running as fast as we can. But when we reach the goal, we are asked to run 100 meters more, over and over and over again. I don't think that software developers should try to be like Usain Bolt. We should more try to be Ricardo Abad. So let me tell you the short story of Ricardo Abad. So he's from the city of Tafalla in Spain. And on the 1st October 2010, he ran a marathon. And on the 2nd October 2010, he ran another marathon. And so he continued for 607 consecutive days, running one marathon a day for more than 1.5 years. And what's even more impressive is that he continued to work in shifts at the local factory meanwhile. So if he worked night or mornings, he ran in the afternoon. And when he worked in the afternoons, he ran in the mornings. And I believe that that's the mentality we should have as software developers. We are not sprinters. We are long-distance runners. We need to slow down and find the sustainable pace. But But why are we doing this kind of rushing? Well, it's probably a combination of things. For instance, deadlines. To me, deadlines, that's usually poison. It's mostly a random date or a random number that someone guesstimated a long time ago. And that number, it magically transforms to become something that we need to reach, something that we should stick to. But I think that I actually did this right, at least once. So at that time, I was doing a gig as a system architect at a Swedish tech agency. So me and my team, we were responsible for the login and the identification of users for their public e-services. And for those of you who don't know the Swedish tech agency, they have this really strict deadline in the beginning of March every year. And that's because everything there circles around the yearly income tax declaration, where approximately 80% of the Swedish population use their e-services during a little bit more than a month. So how do they make sure that nothing breaks during that period? They have this deadline, this code freeze. You can't change anything after that certain date, and you don't mess with that code freeze. So what we needed to do was to replace an old obsolete solution with a brand new one. And this was a big job. I mean, we needed new software. We needed to buy new hardware. And of course, we needed a whole lot of development. But after a while, that deadline in March, it was starting to feel tough. So we needed to make a decision. Should we rush? Should we work overtime? Should we cut corners and build a crappy but hopefully working solution? Or should we wait a year and try to build a quality solution? And this time we actually took what I still think is one of the best decisions in my career. We actually waited. Sure, we lost some prestige. It probably costed some money, but we could build a solution that was easy to maintain, that they could use for many years to come, a solution we could be proud of. But I am sorry to say that this is one of the few occasions where I have ever seen this, that not even this really strict deadline was actually a true deadline. It was more of a goal, and it was totally fine to miss the goals for a few times. And what I believe is another rushing factor is actually the lean and the startup movement, where we are told that the only thing that matters is to deliver, to be the first on the market. But to be honest, how often does it care? How often does it make a difference for your employer if you rush instead of keeping a controlled pace? Maybe for one of you, once in a lifetime. But for the rest of you, I would actually claim that it doesn't ever care. I mean, taking a few Swedish real-time examples here. Spotify, for instance, they won't lose users just because they share playlist with a QR code will be a week late just because you need to do some extra refactoring. And people will keep on playing Minecraft, even if the a new sea creature feature must wait for the next release, just because you want to improve that documentation. And people will definitely not change their mortgage loans to another bank, just because they can't download the latest interest rates as a PDF file from the website for another month. But I can guarantee you that those users, they will definitely start looking for other options and maybe leave you if you start building a crappy and rushed software that you can't change at all in a few years' time. And also, how about all those bad implementations in the name of Agile? I mean, just listen to the word sprint. What does that imply? Well, let's rush as fast as you can for 2 weeks, then come back tomorrow, so we can now start a new 2 weeks rush. That's just like asking Usain Bolt to run 100 meters more right after every race. Instead, I believe that we need to slow down and find the sustainable pace. And the Agile Manifesto, it also actually says this. So Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. And all of you who knows your XP, Extreme Programming, should also recognize sustainable pace as one of the key concepts. So based on this, I would actually claim that I think that we all should stop focusing on speed and start focusing on quality. So I don't think that it cares if you're a bit slower as a developer, but because it does not come down to who's the fastest on the keyboard. It does not come down to who knows all of those new tools, frameworks, and new languages. It does come down to who can understand everything without asking those stupid questions. It all comes down to the quality of the code, because it's still so much more effective in the long run to build things right instead of building things fast. So even if you're old, even if you're slow, you will still bring so much value to your organization as long as you can produce some quality code. And based on that experience that I know you have gathered during these years, I am sure that you can. And Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob, he says that if your software is getting harder and harder to develop, you are doing something wrong. To me, that's exactly what happens when I rush. First, I start to feel a bit bad. And then my application, it becomes harder and harder to make those changes. And after a while, I just want to start the big rewrite. Who has not been there? I mean, you have the opportunity to build something new, build something shiny, but you cut some corners just to get stuff out early, but you have the best intention to fix it later when you have more time. I mean, we have so much to do now, but soon it will be better. After the next sprint, then we will have more time. Then we can fix this. But believe me, you won't get more time later. That crappy code, it will live on. It will hunt you down, and it will bite you. And suddenly, your application will be in such a bad shape that the only thing to do is to start the big rewrite. So the same people start building the same application once again, but they don't really have the time to do it properly. So they cut some corners. They cheat a little bit with the unit testing, and there we go again. There's a word for this. It's called waste. It can more or less kill a company. And Martin Fowler, he says that the fundamental role of internal quality is that it lowers the cost of future change, but there is some extra effort required to write good software, which does impose some cost in the short term. So in 2 sentences, Martin more or less says the same thing that took me 15 minutes. I mean, he is brilliant. But what's actually more interesting is that he actually also claims that developers find poor quality code significantly slows them down within a few weeks. So there are not that many occasions where you actually gain on rushing, right? Not even in the short run, because most software tends to live way longer than just a few weeks. But now I have been talking for way too long. Let's pick up those mobile phones once again. So how often do you feel stressed about deadlines? Is it all the time? Is it often? Is it almost never or never? And it looks like we're gonna have a quite clear winner here. So how often do you cut corners or cheat with the quality? Is it all the time? Is it often? Is it almost never? Or is it never? Quite tight race, but okay, final question for now. So, why do you cut corners? Do you feel pressure from the management to deliver? Do you feel pressure from the team to deliver? Do you feel pressure from yourself to deliver? Or is it more that quality is boring or even unnecessary? Or don't you really know what quality means? Do you have some other kind of reasons? Or we have actually a few superhumans in here that don't cut corners. I'm impressed. And there we had one more. honest, when I saw the results on those previous polls, I was a little bit scared, a little bit spooked. I mean, I think that there are way too many people in this room who feel pressure to deliver, who feel stressed about deadlines, or who cuts corner just to please the managers. There are almost there is some kind of rushing disease running through the developer world. And I believe that the cure for this disease is to slow down. I believe that we should stop focusing on speed and start focusing on quality. We should stop behave like raging bulls and instead slow down and try to take the right decisions. So let me spend the last part of this talk to give you some more concrete examples about what I think you should do when you slow down. So for instance, I think that you should slow down and take the time to practice, take the time to improve your competence. For instance, attend conferences, join a book circle, do coding katas, have brown bag lunches, try to build that learning culture at your workplace. Because I'm sure that it will not only make you and your colleagues better developers, you will write better code, you will build better product, but you will also have so much more fun meanwhile. Because to be honest, the places where I have spent my best years were definitely the places that had a true learning culture, places where I could go home every Friday with a feeling that I had learned something new, something useful this week as well. And also, I believe that improving your competence should not be something that you need to do on your spare time, on evenings, on weekends, on holidays. I mean, weekends, that's for family and friends. Improving your competence should be part of your day-to-day work. I mean, if your employer wants you to do a good job, I think that he also should make sure that you have the time, the tool, and the opportunity, thank you. Thank you, KH. To do that within your working hours. And I also think that you should slow down so you can tweak your process, eliminate the waste. For instance, use the retrospectives and make sure to have a good outcome. Don't just see your retrospectives as a nagging meeting. Make sure that you have some good improvements and that you actually take the time to implement those improvements. Because to me, when you're working, it can often be thought of as some kind of garden. And a garden, that needs constant gardening to keep its shape. But if you're ever in Stockholm, please come by my house if you want to see a garden without a proper gardener. You know, the weeds pops up between the stones, the grass is a little bit too long, the hedge needs to be cut, and the snails, they have some kind of snail race right through the strawberry plants. But at least the internet connection to the house is pretty decent, so I'm pleased anyway. But don't leave your way of working untended. Believe me, you don't want your processes to look like my home garden. And also, I think you should slow down and take the time to get to know each other, build that trust in your team. I guess most of us now have heard about psychological safety, Amy Edmondson theories, and the Google team study that showed that the single most important thing for a team to be high performant was actually the trust in the team, that the team members felt psychologically safe. So don't just see your team as some kind of feature factory or a coding machine. Make sure that you see each other as humans. Spend some time, get to know each other. You should have fun together, laugh together, cry together. Build that trust in your team. And I'm sure that you will be rewarded. And how often do you brush your teeth? Every day, right? And I think the team hygiene should be the same. Sure, you can go on the team building day once a year, climb some mountains, camp in the woods, eat some snakes, and come back and hope that your team will be perfect afterwards. And sure, you could brush your teeth for 24 hours in a row once a year and hope that it will be enough. Or you brush your teeth for a few minutes every day, I am sure what I think makes the greatest impact. And in the same way, I think that you should try to like brush your team hygiene for a few minutes every day, because I'm sure that you will be rewarded. And I think that you should slow down and make a plan. In my experience, we usually do this the least when we need it the most. So constantly plan and revisit. For instance, use your sprint plannings and the daily stand-ups. For me, the daily stand-ups, that's a planning meeting. Its main purpose should not be to like report what you did yesterday. Its main purpose should be to plan the day ahead. But I actually worked at this product company once where I was surrounded by so many great developers. I mean, we were really building like state-of-the-art code. Test coverage was great. Code quality was superb. We should have been that high-performance team. But nobody used the things that we built. We was building things right, but we didn't build the right things. Instead, we should have slowed down, making a quick plan every day, making sure that we were moving in the right direction. And I think that you should slow down and take the time to refactor your code. Remember the Boy Scout rule. Always leave the campground a little bit cleaner than you found it. Always leave your code a little bit cleaner than you found it. So it's said that the ratio between reading and writing code is well over 10:1. So spend some time to improve that readability of your code base. Spend some time to let the design of the system constantly evolve, and spend some time to remove that technical debt day after day, week after week, year after year, because I think that that's the only way to have a maintainable code base in the long run. And I think that you should slow down and add some slack into your life. So have you ever thought about traffic jams? You know, everything rolls quite smoothly on that highway until a number of cars reach some magical limit of what the highway can handle. And suddenly everything goes from a pretty decent pace into a total jam just by adding a few more cars, or maybe because the sun is a little bit low. And I believe that we people, we are more or less the same, with a full schedule or with an idea that you need to be coding from 9 to 5 to make your job. Then you will be choked. As soon as something unexpected happens, there will be chaos. Instead, try to add some slack into your life, some unplanned time. I mean, slack, that's not the same as vacation. It's only time where you don't really know in forehand what to do. So sometimes we will probably just use it to keep on working as usual. Sometimes you might need to take a rest, clear your mind, or maybe you just need to read a book, write a blog post, or just be creative. You will be amazed by how many good ideas that pops up when you are not stressed. Or maybe you can help your neighboring team. Wouldn't it be nice if you could help your neighboring team for a few hours without the need of working overtime or getting stressed yourself? And to sum it up, I believe that we all should slow down and try to build quality software from the beginning, because that's the only way to be fast in the long run. So like 40 minutes ago or something, I said that I had 3 goals for today. So let's see if I succeeded. Whoa. So you will now go home and take the course, Developer to Manager, or will you actually slow down? Or do you think that you should rush a little bit harder? Do you just promise yourself to keep on coding? Or maybe you should try to play some Minecraft just to raise the average age. Or you invest in your competence, try to learn something new, like Fortran. So just some final words to all you developers who probably will stop being a developer in the next few years. Please think this over. Beware of the Peter principle and stay with your passion. And don't bother about your getting old and slow, because you are actually not growing old. You are growing up. Take advantage of that. Make those gray hair your biggest assets and let the rest of the world slow down with you. Thank you.